I'm not saying this needs to be done tomorrow, but it can't drag its feet for another 5 or 10 years. And we could dice it up. We don't have time to do that tonight. But in general, we should have safer apparatus. We should have qualified incident commanders. We should have qualified people riding the front seat. And my own son, who, when he was a volunteer, his volunteer fire company actually issued a test. You had to study for it before you could run or get appointed as a volunteer officer. I thought that was pretty cool.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, that exposure leads to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip. To learn more, visit magnagrip.com.
All right, we're on the clock. Welcome to the Backstep, everybody. Good to see you all. Sorry you have to see us. I always apologize in advance. You know I got a face for radio. You know how that works. And this is Ronnie K over in New York, and my buddy Tommy A out in New Mexico is at the top, and the good-looking guy with the broom on his face. So we'll introduce him in a minute, and I'm sure most of you know who that is, but by his trademark there. But Tommy, what's going on out your end of the world?
We've actually had some rain, so the wildfire threat has kind of diminished a little bit. And really, it's been, I don't want to use the Q word, but it has been.
Okay. All right, good. Good. Yes, things are just humming along here like they always do. You know, the city never sleeps, like they say, but a lot of interesting things going on. You know, we're getting tied up with energy storage systems. You know, the talking about the big lithium-ion batteries, the ones that are the size of a building. You know, Con Edison starting to build and install some of the high rises, and we got a lot of issues with that, but controllable. You know, we passed some code, so we still got our battery issue, and we have our migrant shelter issue. That's a big problem for us. But we got a big task force out looking at the shelters and trying to keep those people safe as best as we can. Some of the buildings are pretty substandard, you know, systems. There's no system. We're using fire guards. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but we're doing the best we can under the circumstances, like they say. So
I noticed that your latest in the blog entry, if you would, kind of stirred up a lot of interest, at least in the email side of it.
Yeah, did you see that? Yeah, no, we got a little discussion going. That's like they say, you know, yes. And you know, I kind of reactivated something I had written about a couple of years back about getting out of the box, you know, and recreating the box and doing strange things like putting finished foam into standpipe systems and pumping it into sprinklers and, you know, all that stuff that I did as an industrial guy, which worked, you know, pumping foam into sprinklers and, you know, dumping a dry chem extinguisher in a fully involved living room just to slow it down. And the first time I did that, I was on a podcast with Bill Gustin and Mike Dugan. And Mike had no sound. He couldn't get the sound working. So Gustin and I were talking. It was all about portable extinguishers. And I said, you know, Bill, I said, I just wrote something. This was a couple of years ago. I says, you know, two companies pull up. The engine's trying to get a water supply. There's fire blowing out the living room window. I says, why not take a dry chem unit, a truck guy, take a dry chem extinguisher, go over to the window and swirl it around in the window. I says, it's hydrocarbons burning anyway. Give it a smack of dry chemical. Just knock it down a little bit, just to slow the fire down. And he said, well, I never thought of that. And then, you know, Dugan had no sound. So I said, Mikey, I know you can't speak. Shake your head yes or no if it's not a bad idea. And he went like this. He liked it. Okay, Mikey liked it. So it was funny as hell. But so I kind of did a little blog on getting out of the box and doing that kind of stuff. And it did generate quite a bit of banter on the old email. So with all of that, the guy in the bottom box in the Hollywood Squares is, needless to say, is Billy Goldfeder. Billy's, I think, got about 48, 49 years, I'm thinking, Billy. That sound right?
52.
52, okay. Yeah, I'm heading to 50 years myself in October, but 52 years of the service, ton of volunteer time, ton of career time, and just a really accomplished guy. And we couldn't thank him enough for joining us tonight. But there's a subject that's out there it's the hottest thing going. Aside from lithium-ion batteries, this is the hottest discussion topic going right now. And we thought it wouldn't be any better if we could have Billy on and to talk about this. We're going to discuss tonight. We're going to talk about the new emergency response standard, the proposed rule put together by OSHA. So, Billy, before I ask you the first question, what's new? What's going on?
I got a 7th grandkid on the way, so that's new.
Wow. There you go.
Congrats.
It's going to be a little Maryland baby girl to my son out in Maryland. But
you raising a mixed softball team or what? What are you doing?
So their nickname is the Six Pack. So I have a meeting with all of the 6 of them this fall to determine their new nickname and logo, branding, all the marketing.
Sure.
Yeah. No, things are good, man. And
good.
I'm actually on the road on my way out to FRI in Dallas. So I'll see some of you folks there. But
Great.
Yeah, so no complaints, pal. I'm 69 years old. I still get to go to fires. What's not to like?
What's not cool about that, right? So, hey, listen, I'll throw you a suggestion. Why don't you call them the Lucky 7 and get them T-shirts with like a pair of dice with a 5 and a 2? Be like a Vegas thing. Be cool as hell.
We're working. So, we have a very democratic process as long as they agree with what I decide.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect. Spoken like a chief. I love it. So we want to get into the emergency response standard, the proposed rulemaking. There's a lot of discussion. There's a ton of chatter. And so, Billy, the first thing I'm going to throw at you, okay, it's really not a high and inside fastball, so I think you'll be fine. But why did OSHA do this? Why'd they do this?
Well, first of all, let's be real clear. OSHA had a subcommittee of fire service representatives who put this together. That's published. It's known. I mean, I've got it. There were representatives from the Teamsters, the FC, the IFF, National Volunteer Fire Council, State Association of EMS Officials, National Fallen Firefighters, NFPA. So NIOSH had some reps on there. NVFC, as I mentioned, a couple of reps from NVFC, USFA. So when we say why did they do this, they've been working on this for years. This is a number of years old, and so you'd have to ask them why they did it. Now, my opinion is, and I don't know if you can link an article that I did on this subject, Ronnie. I'll send it to you. But basically, it says the OSHA sky is falling, and my point of the article was that sometimes if we don't fix certain things that need to be fixed, such as staffing, apparatus replacement, training, things like that, someone's going to do it for us. And in the piece that I wrote, and again, I'll send it to you, and if you can attach it that way, the folks can read it and, see what they think. I mentioned 2 issues. One was in Massachusetts, when a firefighter fell off a rig and was critically injured. And we didn't decide it was time for us to stop riding on the back step or the side of rigs, Backstep boys, right? It was done for us by the manufacturers because the attorneys went after one particular manufacturer, and that's Peter Persh, who's now out of business. If you had built your apparatus safer, firefighters would not be riding on the back, and therefore he would not have been critically injured, and then he died many years later. Another example is a woman named Sandy Lee. She was a firefighter in Prince George's County, Maryland. She fell off the apparatus and was run over by the rig. She fell under the wheels, and I'll link these 2 stories and videos and whatever I have on that run for you and for the both of you to share with the audience. My point is, we are not, look, we're the first to say, put stickers on, put signs up, 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. I'm a big tradition guy. I love the job, but I can't do the job without proper training. And let's just take a look at that. We still have fire departments, and this is going to just reduce. It's already reduced my Christmas card recipients significantly. But look, we've got fire departments that are still voting on their chief based upon popularity. Now, I understand when you have a leader, you need someone you can trust in. But football teams don't vote on their leader. Passengers don't vote on their pilot. These folks have got to have qualifications in order to succeed. And that, I think, is one of the points of many points in the OSHA proposals, that we need to have basic minimal training for people riding the front seat of apparatus and the basic minimal training for people who are commanding fires. And when we say, let it be a local issue, we already have that. We already have that chance. And some places have done well and some places have not. Now, and I'll let you get back to some questioning, but let me just summarize this.
That's okay. We wanted to do an overall opening. So you're spot on. And I did read the article, which is how you ended up coming here.
Okay.
So I saw
feel free to put it on the blog and they can read it and understand where I'm coming from. I'm not saying this needs to be done tomorrow, but it can't drag its feet for another 5 or 10 years. And we could dice it up. We don't have time to do that tonight. But in general, we should have safer apparatus. We should have qualified incident commanders. We should have qualified people riding the front seat. And my own son, who, when he was a volunteer, his volunteer fire company actually issued a test. You had to study for it before you could run or get appointed as a volunteer officer. I thought that was pretty cool.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, that exposure leads to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip. To learn more, visit magnagrip.com.
And when he got passed and he became a sergeant, I still worried to death what qualifications and what experiences he had. You got to start somewhere to understand that. But I think it's time that people are going to say about the costs. And in the piece, I also mentioned, we're paying double what we were for apparatus 5 or 10 years ago. And somehow we found the money. I think this is the same case. I think this is more. Now, again, there are certain communities I understand, therefore they should get a waiver. We are going to do this. We are going to do that. We are going to put our officers through training, but we need 4 years instead of 2 years. That should be very negotiable. I don't think that should be rammed down either. But look, you're going to have to pay overtime for people covering and all that. So I understand that. The point is we need to get there. And this is going to force the issue of us getting there, I think, is the thing. Apparatus, the cost of apparatus. As I mentioned, figured out you couldn't order a rig right now if you wanted to and get it for less than 2 or 3 years. So somebody's found the money to buy these elaborate apparatus. Okay, I was reached out to by a state firefighters association with some concerns about what I wrote, and I'm not rude, but focus is always on the public. That's for the public. I mean, you can buy stickers and T-shirts. It's all about them. We're here for them. Then let's really do that. Let's really be here for them. Let's make sure when we arrive, we actually have a clue as what we're doing. And many departments are phenomenal. There's still some, and you see the videos every day, that have trouble laying out. They have trouble stretching a line. The commander's running around in shorts and a ball cap. It's 2024. We need to be commanders. We need to be company officers, and we need to be firefighters. And again, most are, but some are not. And you can almost regionalize it in some cases. But in this one case, when the association reached out to me, I said, you're worried about these rules. Why aren't you worried about the failure of so many volunteer companies? Tone after tone after tone. Fire truck responding with a 65 or a 70-year-old who's supposed to go interior, and 2 high school kids and another 70-year-old driving. That's the big issue. If we want to, quote, save the volunteer fire service, we need to do what's best for the public. And sometimes saving the volunteer fire service means we have to give more than what we were used to. We have to take more training. And if we don't have the time, then we need to figure out what's best for the public. So That's a
I tend to agree with you. I mean, when the Everyone Goes Home program was developed 20 years ago, I went out with another guy here when I was in Jersey, and we were doing it, every night for like 3 years, and we did a couple of hundred of those classes, and we go to the volunteer houses, and nothing against them. I was one, you were one, all of us were. I'd say to them, it's time for the 75-year-old guy to put his feet up and say, hey, listen, I paid my dues. I did 50 years. We got to do something else. And those guys would grab me on a break. I say, what the hell are you doing? And it's like, well, I'm speaking the truth. And they would say, if we don't get the rig out during the day, no one's going to get the rig out. So then my next question is, okay, so if you get the rig out and you get to a house fire, what are you doing when you get there? What are you doing? You're waiting for other people to show up. I said, you can't. You're not going to hook up and start stretching a line. You're 75 years old. You can't.
In some case, we're fooling the public. It's a facade because they see coats and helmets and red trucks arrive. They think the fire department's there. And look, again, I'm not dissing anybody. I love a term. If you've seen one fire department, you've only seen one fire department. Because you can have two towns right next to each other and they do the job totally differently. One's career, one's volunteer, all that kind of stuff. So those of you participating or listening in on this webinar or reading the article, don't worry about everybody. Worry about your department. What are you doing to improve? And I think that's all OSHA is going to end up doing, is show us that you're improving. And people say, we don't want the government interfering. They're not interfering with you. They're interfering for the public who may not be getting the service they're entitled to, but you've got a $2-3 million budget. What are you spending your money on if you're not training people or hiring people or whatever you got to do? The other side of the coin is I drove through very rural Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas today, and I saw firehouses that don't have $25,000 a year. Okay, that needs to be addressed as much. They need to get the training. And look, maybe your department becomes an exterior-only department. I don't know. Shane Ray suggested that years ago. In some towns, they have BLS, EMS. Some towns, they have ALS, depending upon what the public wants and what they're willing to pay for. If your community is not willing to pay and fund your fire department, then they'll protect the exposures, and that may be the only situation. And I know people are going nuts. Listen to that. But we got to be realistic. We got to make sure that when the public sees a building that says fire department, there's actually a fire department with firefighters responding who are qualified and trained. And I don't think it's possible for volunteer fire departments to get that training. There's some really good online stuff that's some excellent command programs, and then you do a couple of days in the simulator. Look, guys, if there's a will, there's a way, I think. And that's why there's tons of stuff. That's why we're seeing $2 million ladder trucks still being made and 2 years and 3 years waiting, because where there's a will, there's a way. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's not only is there stuff around, it's free. Look at all the free stuff. You can go to the IAFC. The IAFF has stuff, and they'll share it. Doesn't matter. The Fallen Firefighters Foundation has the Learning Network. There's so much free training that you can get online, and there's local guys that are willing to drop in. Guys, if in the town you live in, the town I live in, I've offered the chief 10 times. Hey, I'll come over and do a class for you. So there's a million ways to get stuff. You don't have to spend $1 zillion on training, especially today.
Now the other one, and I'm trying to listen to the devil's advocates in my ear. Where are we going to get the time? That's a very realistic issue. You may not have time to have a fully volunteer fire department anymore. What if we can't afford a paid department? That becomes an issue. Or having career firefighters. That becomes an issue for the local community to decide. If they're not willing to pay the taxes and they're not willing to pay the price, then they're going to get these very dedicated, very gung-ho folks on a crapshoot. They may or may not show up if your volunteer fire department's not willing to change, such as looking at duty crews where all the members take turns and you're in the firehouse instead of driving 5 minutes, 10 minutes away. So we need to look and see, we formed Ben Franklin, right? Formed the bucket brigades and all that to take care of their neighbors. I think really what OSHA is giving an opportunity to do is to push the button and say what's best for our neighbors in 2024. It may not look the same, and that makes many of us, including myself, uncomfortable. But again, what's best for the people who have the fire tomorrow morning, Monday morning at 10:30 a.m. in an all-volunteer department in a rural or urban or suburban area? You know what the answer is in most cases. It's going to be a slow response.
Yeah. And you know what? The average person doesn't know. They really don't know. But so I think it's our obligation to make sure that they get what they think they're going to get, because they don't know. I mean, even on a mutual aid call, you can have 10 towns in on a fire. And I've done it. I've asked people, I say, go look at all the doors on the apparatus and come back. You know, the onlookers, the uh-oh squad, I call them. They show up, they yell, uh-oh. So they walk back. They come back and they're looking at the doors and saying, wow, all these towns are here to help. Yeah, because we can't do it by ourselves. You know, I did that in Wilton many times, you know, just to take a look at the doors.
You know, back in the 70s and 80s, when I was a volley in Long Island, it was unheard of to get mutual aid. My firehouse, which had 2 engines and a heavy rescue, we'd get 20 guys within 3 or 4 minutes. That's not the case today. And that not just them, but that represents everybody as well.
You know, when I had been working up in Colorado, I noticed with folks relocated, maybe come out of California and moved to the woods, and they were expecting the same level of service that they were getting when they were living in L.A. out in rural Colorado. And Billy and Ron Bolt, you guys know that just isn't going to happen. And I got such mixed emotions about this stuff of knowing what can be done. And
Tommy, I had a couple of families that relocated from Manhattan to Wilton, Connecticut. And they came by the firehouse, and we welcomed them to town. We had a welcome package for them. We'd show up at their new house, and they stopped by. A couple of them stopped by, and I said, you need to understand something. I was very frank with them. I said, you're not going to get the kind of fire response that you get in New York City. I told them straight up. They said, what do you mean? I said, I got 6 people on shift here. I said, the New York City Fire Department brings enough firefighters to scare the fire away before we even put water on it. They bring enough guys to scare the fire out. I says, it's not going to be like that here. So you need to do a better job with your family, with having drills in the house. Make sure your smoke alarms are working. Make sure you can Gesundheit. Make sure you can evacuate your home. I said, and we'll get there. We'll do the very best we can. But you're not going to get a New York City response. I want to be frank with you right up front. And they appreciated that. They said, okay, thank you. You know, so
let me comment on that. So when I went out to Ohio in '95, and I came from the DC area where automatic aid box alarms was the way of life forever. Okay, you never got one fire truck with a couple people. There was regional response. We had areas that literally the first alarm assignment came from West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland. And they could all actually talk on the same channel, which, right? I mean, when we realize we only have 6 people on duty, we need to think what else we can do to solve that problem. And it doesn't mean you can't hire people. It means you may need to look at your neighbors. When I came out there in '95, there was no automatic aid, and some of the chiefs couldn't stand each other. They were traveling, 4 or 5 miles to a fire, and here's a fire station literally across the street from where the fire was. Well, through a lot of good work by a lot of great people, our region, which is the greater Cincinnati area, has a phenomenal box alarm regional automatic aid response, AMARS, automatic mutual aid, whatever you want to call it. And you may or may not like that other chief, so don't have them over for dinner, right? But the fact is, we don't want them to beat us to our fire. It ain't your fire. It's a poor bastard that's having the fire. Let them come. Let's go. And put your personalities away. So, and I really think that is the root of much of the consternation over this whole OSHA thing, is we're not looking at what's best for the people who are having that fire. And if we look at what's best for the people who are having that fire, it may mean a different way of doing business. It may mean that we have to hire some people. It may mean that we have to recruit much harder for volunteers. Hey, you and I have talked about this, the 3 of us have talked about this for years. One of the biggest problems in some of the volunteer fire departments is you're just not welcome there. You drive by the firehouse and you see certain cars there, like I ain't stopping there. You got to make it a welcoming place instead of a place filled with bullshit and gossip and all that kind of stuff. And I do, and there are some very successful volunteer fire departments out there. A friend of ours, I think you all know Ray McGuire from Freeport, New York. They have a phenomenal response, but they have lots of conditions. They have certain standards. They have certain requirements. And it's my opinion, not just by watching them, but by watching other successful volunteer fire departments. In some cases, the more disciplined it is, the more people want to be there, as opposed to a lackadaisical place who says, oh, we can't get anybody to show up. Well, let's start looking at each member, see what they're doing, why they're not turning out. Let's get real. Again, if our focus is on what's best for the public, a lot of this shit seems to fall in place.
Yeah, and most of those folks, they're looking for leadership. They want to be led, and they need to be led. So, the guys I've spoken to, young guys, the kids that are volunteers, and the ones that are bragging and are excited to go in, are telling me how structured their firehouse is. We do this, we drill. We got to make certain percentages. We got to do this. We got to do that. One night's got to be on maintenance. We got to do fundraising, and they're all lined up, and the calendar's all set. They're all excited for that, and I think that's probably what we need to show, because I think the young people today, they look for that structure. They look for that structure. While some people say they're lazy, they're not lazy. I don't think they're lazy at all. They're smart. And give them something to do. They'll be happy if you give them something to do.
And the leadership there is that I know 2 months from now on our drill night what the drill is going to be. And I know it starts at 7. I know it's done at 9. So if I got to get home and change the baby or whatever I got to do, as opposed to, well, what should we drill on this week? Or we don't know what we're going to drill on. There's got to be structure. Time is so precious. So when you're telling me that volunteers don't have enough time, and I understand some of it's very legit, the fact is, are we looking to see how we use our volunteers' time? All right, now this will make the rest of the audience go nuts. The day of fundraising is over. You join a volunteer fire department, you go door to door, run a boot drive, you got to collect money. That's ridiculous. It's 2024. The community needs to pay a tax and pay for the fire service, even if it's volunteer. But how are you going to buy a $2 million tower ladder with boot drives or turkey dinners? It ain't going to happen.
You can't do it. No, you can't do it. We always say, how many hot dogs you got to sell, to buy a pumper? It's impossible. It's an impossible thing. Tom, you want to shoot something at Billy?
Yeah, I'm torn. I understand the safety part of it. And when I looked at this, I was looking at Kurt Ferrone's website, and he kind of listed out the NFPA standards that are coming into play here. And 1005 for marine firefighting for land-based firefighters. I got to thinking, with the tragedy in Newark, could that have been prevented if somebody had looked at that standard and say, hey, we need to start doing some of this stuff? But then I took the time.
That's exactly, as it's coming out in the reports and everything else, of course. We have a railroad that goes through our town. We have 2 interstates. So we are aware that what the railroad's carrying, we're aware of what's on the so we have to get prepared. If you've got a port in your first due, you might want to think about marine firefighting.
The other thing, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, I read the comments that National Volunteer Fire Council submitted, and that's what creates some of the consternation. Is I can understand where these guys are coming from, and could it be a situation where parts of the standard are good for the little bitty 5-guy volunteer fire department out in the woods compared to, say, a volunteer fire company in New Jersey that has got members and money and all that other stuff, and trying to find a good mix for that. I wish I had the answer, because I'd be jumping up and down with it. But
I think let me touch on that. So, if you live in a rural area and you have a rural volunteer fire department, number one is you need to join. Okay, so that's critical. I mean, this is literally neighbors helping neighbors. But you also, and folks who've been in those communities for years and years and years, they understand that. There has to be a community-based service. We get involved, we join. When the new people come in, like Ron was talking about before, you let them know that's what you're getting into here, and they need to participate. But should the same exact standard apply to, let's say, FDNY or LA or Chicago as it would for the Backwoods Volunteer Fire Department? No, but there should be a base standard that at minimal we should have to meet. The firefighter riding the front seat of the rural engine has the same house fire as they do on Staten Island or in suburban Los Angeles. They have to size it up the same way. They're even more challenged because they got to figure out where their water's coming from. But it can be done. It can be done. And it can be done with volunteers. But Tommy, as you said about the volunteers, are we trying to save the volunteer fire service for the community or for ourselves? And I think it can be a mix, okay? But it's got to be first the public and what's best for the public. And that means at least you need to let them know what the reality is. We have 15 volunteers. It takes us an average of 6 to 8 minutes to get a truck on the road, yada, yada, yada. Here's our stats. Here's what we would like to do to change. And that's also leadership too, right? Leadership on the fire ground, but leadership in the political arena or in the community is we'd like to change. We would like to hire, or we'd like to start paying our volunteers. We're going to turn it into a part-time department. We'll start paying our volunteers so they don't have to work 2 other jobs in addition to their full-time job. This can be their part-time job. But to hire them, they're going to have minimal qualifications. They're going to have to do duty crews in the firehouse. Again, we're not the same fire service we were 100 years ago. We're not even the same fire service we were 25 years ago. So going right back to what you said, why did OSHA do this? To keep us moving. And again, and I sent you the link to all the subcommittee members so you can see we were represented. People are screaming, where did this come from? We've been represented. Now, if you have issues between communicating with your representative and your organization, you can fix that. That's up to you. But this is
and I think it's important to take that particular thing and just go back a couple of years, probably 30 years already, when OSHA passed 1910-146 for confined space. Okay, they didn't ask us anything. They looked at it and said, these guys are killing themselves trying to rescue people from confined spaces. We better do something because they're not doing anything about it. So we're going to pass 146. We're going to protect the responders. 65% of the people getting killed in a confined space was us and the cops. So it's like, we're going to do this to save your life. And everybody was kicking and screaming, saying, why are they dictating to us? Well, we didn't take care of it ourselves. So they stepped in and did it. But this is not the case with this. The way I'm looking at it and the way it sounds is that we very much had a seat at the table here. They didn't just do this in a vacuum.
And again, I don't have any connection. I really don't know any of the folks. I mean, I know the folks who are on that subcommittee, but I don't know the big shots at OSHA. So I don't know some of these answers. But I think if they look at some of the line of duty death reports, some of the critical injury reports, they're identifying that, we need to improve in some areas here. And
the message I got from this coming down the road, and the twofold invention, I think you mentioned it, Billy, is we got to educate our public officials, because sometimes we just do a shitty job with that. We get complacent, and if things are going okay, we try not to stir the pot. But we've really got to educate our communities of, here's the reality of what you got for fire protection, and are the needs of the community and the fire service being met by continuing to do business the way we have in the past.
And it's like going for a physical. We really don't want to find out what's going on, so therefore we avoid it. And it's similar to this. you're the chief of a proud volunteer fire department, or even a combination or career department that's low staffed and low funded. You're really not comfortable in telling the public where you're not succeeding, where you're concerned about deficiencies. And that's why things such as accreditation and ISO and stuff like that come along to kind of help us do a self-evaluation of where we can improve what we can improve on. But you don't need any big fancy accreditation. You don't need any study. You don't need the ISO to come in for you to figure out that at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, only 2 people are showing up for your fire. You know it. I know it. It's pretty simple.
It's academic. I mean, it is very, very simple, and that's why I kind of went through that. When I was in Connecticut, I told the town council, and when you tell the town council that, you're telling the emperor to have no clothes. You're telling the emperor that they're stark naked, and they didn't want to hear it. The town didn't want to hear it, and I said, listen. At one point, I was trying to hire 2 more guys per shift because my truck only didn't get out 65% of the time. My truck sat on the floor. If we went downtown to commercial area, we took the truck. If we had to go north to a house, we took the engine tanker. The truck sat. And as you guys know, the truck's your toolbox. That was our toolbox. We had to leave the truck 65% of the time. So after a couple of years, I got my feet wet. I went to a meeting one night, and I said, we need to hire more people. And here's why. I said, how many of you were on the council 15 years ago? And about 6 hands went up out of 12, whatever. I said, you bought us that ladder truck, that beautiful. Oh yeah, the rear wheels, the rear wheels turn. When the front wheels turn, we got the rear steering. It's a piece, right? They remember that. I said that truck sits 65% of the time. That truck sits at a firehouse when we go out to a fire call. Really? How come? I got nobody to drive it. There's nobody to operate it. And there I was telling the emperors they had no clothes. But they said, well, how can we fix that? And then they made me go back to revert. Well, maybe you could recruit volunteers. They used to have volunteers in that town to supplement the career guys. They had a combo system. So we did, of course, go back and do a study, because that takes another 6 months, right? So we do the study, and that didn't work either. So I never got the guys, and the truck still sits 65% of the time, but you got to tell them. You got to be upfront and honest with them. They don't want to hear it.
Well, that's one of the things I've always tried to explain to either our boards or city council, wherever I happen to be working with at the time, is fire protection costs money, and somebody's going to be paying for it. You're either going to pay higher taxes to make sure you got adequate fire protection, or if you're an ISO Class 10 department, the insurance company is going to be jamming you to make sure that they can cover the losses because your fire department sucks. It's basic economics. Somebody's going to have to pay the bill. And it's either going to have to be the government or it's going to have to be the insurance industry.
But our spirit is unique, and if the town decides garbage collection is going to be cut in half, then there's going to be more garbage. The garbage collectors are not going to come out on their off-duty time and go out of their way to pick up garbage. We can't do that in the fire department. You give us 2 people on an engine, 3, 4, or 5, we're going to try to do the same job, only the clock is ticking against us, and it puts the public at great risk, not to mention ourselves. So in the case like you just mentioned in Wilton, which you did, here's our 3 options. Decide what you want to pay for, otherwise the ladder truck's going to sit. And sometimes it has to get that way. The problem is, if Joe is off duty in Wilton and he's driving through town and he hears a fire, he's going to run up and drive the ladder truck for you, which is good because we need the ladder truck. But the garbage people don't do that, Parks and Recreation. So it's a balance between that. I'm all for Joe driving that ladder truck off duty, whatever it takes to get up there. But this ties back into how we do business. And it may be that in areas like this, where you used to do it yourselves, I know in our area, most of the departments are pretty well staffed the same. We're putting about 25 to 30 firefighters on a first alarm for a building, a dwelling, whatever, in about 6 to 7 minutes. But that's through a whole lot of chiefs working their asses off to develop this regional response. And again, some of them aren't the best of friends, but they've been able to push that aside And it can work. And you see it in other areas. You see it in the Maryland, D.C. area. You see it up in Columbus, Ohio. And now we see it in the last number of years in the Cincinnati area. And it's phenomenal. And many of the chiefs have taken the same training, the same qualifications. So if Chief Jones from 2 towns over is due on the box and he or she gets there first, they have command. And nobody's losing their shorts over it because they went through the training. So there are ways to do this without staffing. What can the local economy take? And in Wilton, your ultimate would be to have 20, 25 people on duty. It ain't going to happen. So we have to figure out other ways to do it. Minimize. I mean, we should be able to handle a basic emergency. But in this day and age, a dwelling fire, I need 20, 25, 30 people, including a bunch of bosses. And most departments in suburbia and certainly in the rural areas aren't going to have that.
Yeah, and I got together real fast with my mutual aid partners. We had 6 fire departments around us, 3 career and 3 volunteer. I got together with them right away and said, "Hey, let me look at the system. What have you guys done in the past, and what do we need to change?" And they were all willing to get in the boat, which is fine. Is fine. I want to get back to the OSHA thing for a second, Billy. Everything I've read. By the way, for you guys out there that haven't seen it, the write-up in the register is 250 pages. And if you never read 250 pages of Federal Register, you don't know what you're missing. All right. But everything that I read, it looks to me like we're kind of doing a lot of this anyway. It's not like there's 5,000 brand new things. There's some new things, but, they cite, they look at FPA 600, 1500, 1561, 1700, 1710. We're doing a lot of this stuff anyway. I'm looking for the real brand new stuff going through the register. There's a clip of it, folks. Look at that nice small print in there. Isn't that nice? So, and I'm reading it, and I'm not seeing anything unbelievably brand new. Like, holy cow! We got to make sure every pumper has 5 axles now, or something. Something like really out of space. And I'm not seeing it. What's your opinion of that? I mean, are we doing most of it now?
Yeah, I think when we dust most of it off, there are a few things that many departments are not doing. They may not agree in how often tires should be replaced and things like that. But for the most part, we are. And there's a big panic over it. That's why my article is called "The OSHA Sky is Falling," because I don't really think it is. And again, find me anything in there that's not designed to better the public and better us who's providing service to the public. If you do, I'll take back everything I've spoken on and written on. But if we're focused on the public, that works, right? And so when you go through it, again, my department may not be able to afford to do X in 2 years. I need 5 years to do it, and that's what we're going to do. And in some places, like I know some states where you're an OSHA state, the state can decide whether they want to adopt OSHA or not. And I've heard some, well, we're not going to, we're going to get rid of it. I go, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? For what? Why are you getting rid of it? Why don't we go through it a little bit and come up with a plan? I would be shocked, and we'll write about it and talk about it. These laws come out and you tell OSHA, whoever that is, that this is what I can do immediately. This is what I can do in 3 years. This is what I can do in 5 years. They're not going to blink, because you're not going to be able to fix some of this stuff immediately if you're not already doing it, like you said, right? But to me, the biggest issue is training and the qualifications of the people leading our fires and riding the front seat. That to me is the most critical thing, amongst many other things as well, staffing and things like that.
And they are, frankly, it sounds funny, but they're a kind, gentle OSHA. They are. I was in industry for 20 years. Okay, I worked for Merck. I was the fire chief at Merck. And I'm out of there 12 or 13 years. But even that back then when I was there, OSHA came to big industry a lot. But they told us back then, if you want, we'll come to your facility and we'll do an audit for you without penalty. Like the big bad OSHA guy was coming into an industrial site without a summons book, and we'll do a courtesy thing to put you on the right track so you can protect your workers and be safe. So they are kind of a kind of gentle old. They're not looking to smack you around. And same thing with the timelines. When we had certain issues got to get done, listen, we're gonna put out a contract. It's gonna take longer than that, but we're getting it done. We're making strides to improve the program and all that stuff. And they were okay with that. They audit now and then, but they were good. And they'll be good with this too. They don't want to shut down the country's fire service. They're not here for that.
And they're not.
They're just trying
They're just trying to make things a little better in areas where we didn't do that.
But I mean, there's a couple of, but I didn't see any insurmountable showstoppers. Let me go to medical exams. So medical exams. One of the big things is who's paying for it. So here's my thought. Okay, so you're a volunteer firefighter and you do something else for a living, whatever it is. Okay, every medical plan, you have a medical plan through your employer. Every medical plan in the nation entitles you to an annual physical at no charge, or your copay $20. When I was in between gigs, I had my own insurance, and I was so used to having an annual through the fire department. I said, you know what? I got to do my annual no matter what. I called my doctor. They took my insurance. They ran me through the whole gamut, blood test, lungs, the whole bit. So everybody can get that. And if you're over 65, like some of us are, you're already on Medicare and everything else, you can get an annual physical anyway. So I'm not sure what they're carrying this flag. Who's going to pay for medicals? Well, everybody has some sort of an outlet to get a medical. I believe
everybody does. And in the piece, that's what I talked about, is that Obamacare will give you your I don't care if you're right wing, left wing, whatever, you can get a physical if you don't have any insurance. You can get a physical and you get insurance. And at some point, we have to understand there is a cost to doing business, to be even the most basic fire department. And a basic a physical, maybe not as intense as the current NFPA. It may take time to get there. But if every department just gave everybody a standard physical, IFC's got a great document. IFF, I'm sure, has it too, identifies what must be included. Just get that. And
it's a summary. It's like a summary of 1582, right? You guys talking about? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's easy. You hand it to the doc and say, test me on these 15 things, and maybe one or two of those will cost you out of pocket. But I'm willing to pay because I want to know. I want to know if there's something ruined,
If it is out of pocket, let's take a rural fire department. Maybe instead of, be careful how I say this. We are providing Fire Act grants to departments getting things that they may not necessarily need. There are also volunteer fire departments around the country that cannot even afford to send their members for physicals because of the copay. Maybe we come up with that program. If you do it through Obamacare. I mean, here's OSHA, the federal government. Okay, OSHA, we agree with you. Everybody needs a physical, but you need to talk to your friends down the hall in the Obamacare office and make sure every firefighter with ID can get a physical. We've now solved the problem. You fix it, OSHA. We're willing to get our physicals. Fighting the physicals because we don't want a physical. We don't want to know. Right? That's a very human, very real thing. Dude, if it wasn't for me going for a physical, what'll be 3 years ago, like right around now, I wouldn't have found out I had cancer. So, same thing with you, right? You went through the same thing. So if it weren't for, I don't want to know. Bullshit. You do want to know because in most cases we can fix you. So stop. Again, we're focusing on what we like, not what's best for the public, right? You find out that all your arteries are blocked 98% and you're driving the engine to go into calls. Come on. Who you doing a favor there?
Yeah, I get it. Tommy?
I'm still, I just feel torn. And I saw something here that looked like an old argument from when a lot of this stuff originally came around, like back in 1980, is what's the definition of a volunteer? Are you a volunteer? Are you an employee? Maybe you're getting some type of a stipend or a nominal fee for what you're doing. And I hate to drill down in the minutia that far to see what's going on, but it almost seems like there's some unanswered questions. I saw a reference to the 20% rule way back, I remember, of, they looked at a firefighter's salary, and if you made less than 20% of what that number was, you were a volunteer, you weren't an employee. I don't know whether some of that stuff's still kicking around, but I thought I saw some of that verbiage in what the new amendments look like.
Yes, I think one of the best documents out there, and none of them are perfect, but Kurt Verone's checklist is a good one, and maybe you include that as a part of your piece. But I don't know. I mean, you want me to define firefighter? Do you respond to fires on a fire truck, and do you have bunker gear? I mean, I've answered your question. That's a firefighter. All right. Are you in wildland? And do you go to when the forest is on fire? Do you go? That's a firefighter. I mean, you're on call or you respond. That's it. I mean, this back and forth about, well, I'm really just a volunteer, but yet you're the first ones to complain when they say volunteers are not as good as career. Well, I've got volunteer departments that I know around the country that will run circles around some career fire departments, and there are some career fire departments. So stop the silliness. I mean, we've all been there. Everybody knows that, and we need to be honest with ourselves. And like I said, if you've seen one fire department, you only see one fire department. So, when we get into these arguments, what's a firefighter? Shut up. It's somebody who goes to fires when the bell goes off and they put it out. I mean, I don't mean that to you, Tommy, but I'm just saying, come on, let's stop jacking each other around here. It's ridiculous. Let's just get serious about, again, we see so much about we're here for the public. We're here for the public. Then what does the public need? And again, that can be done on a local level. Let's say your community does not want a fast response, does not care if you've had physicals, and does not care the age of your apparatus, then that's great. Then you're all set. And when OSHA comes in, tell them our community doesn't give a rat's ass and see what OSHA does with that. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. It's funny because when all the years that we've been around, collectively, the three of us have been in the fire service for 10,000 years, right? So, yeah, and we've talked to so many people and so many guys and so many gals, and you get into those conversations where, we're 100% volunteer and we love our community and blah, blah, blah. But some of those departments, and I seen it when I was in Eastern Connecticut. I worked in Eastern Connecticut before I went to Wilton. Okay. And in that region, there were departments not getting that at all. You'd hear the page go out over the county thing 2, 3, 4 times. You don't hear an engine get on the road, so that now they start calling the neighboring towns and saying, listen, the Smith Fire Department ain't getting out. Maybe you guys can go over there and help these people. Their house is on fire. So, and those guys are the same guys that go to a council meeting and defend their fire department and say, no, we're viable. We're good. And we're here. So it's another case of like we're kidding ourselves. Like it's like, come on, guys, you gotta step up. And we had this when I was in Jersey. We had a rescue squad in the town I was in. I was a callman. I was a volunteer callman in the town with some paid guys. And then we had a volunteer rescue squad, all volunteer. They ran the ambulances. They had a rescue truck. They weren't quite Chevy Chase rescue, but they were a rescue truck. And after a while, they stopped getting out. You'd hear the pager go out for the ambulance 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The next town was coming in and taking the ambulance calls. And then finally, the fire chief, he went to the town council and said, you better give us the ambulance. People are going to start dying in this town, and it's going to be on you. So they saw the light, and they started to pick up hours like during the day when the volleys weren't around. And then finally, now they have it 24/7. They have EMS 24/7. But in the interim, while this is going on, they're having this subject coming up at the council meetings, and the people from the squad are showing up at night. Most of them guys that are our age with no hair or gray hair, and they've been on the squad for 50 years, and they don't want it to go away. They're trying to save it.
And I get that. I get it. Totally get it. But we need to do something. So, I mean, if it's about your enjoyment being a member, outstanding. Now let's get you a paid driver or get you whatever's needed. But it can't be we don't want to change because it interferes with our lifestyle or our hobby or our enjoyment. That's not how this works, and that's not how we were founded. We were founded to go to emergencies, and really quickly too. Volunteer departments, many very successful volunteer departments today are doing duty crews. Okay, now, I want to just mention before, I don't know how much time we have, but this is not just about volunteer fire departments. This is also about large municipal ones, small ones, et cetera, because there is a change coming, whether it's cost wise. I mean, let's say OSHA, everybody has to have a green baseball hat. That's 14,000 green baseball hats for FDNY. That's a lot of baseball hats, right? You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So, I mean, the other issue is that I want to bring up is turn it around. Use this. How many times has the fire chief gone before council or mayor and they say, what requires this new ladder truck? And it's only 15 years old. You know it needs to be replaced, but it's not time. And you just say, we really would like to get a more modern one. Well, if there's no requirement, then you're not getting it. Now, and you can say NFPA, but we also put that back and forth. Sometimes we tell people NFPA requires things, and other times we tell people we don't have to follow NFPA because it's just a standard. So again,
it's for convenience, whatever's convenient, right?
So with OSHA, if these standards go through, and again, we're not done. They're listening. Believe me, they have hearings and all that stuff going on. They're listening. And contact your representatives who sit on that subcommittee, right? But with OSHA, it will give you the muscle to get things better, to replace things, to train people, to have standards. So do you want it or not? And that's, again, it's very human of us to pick and choose what we like and what we don't like, right?
Yeah. When we were starting to fool around with hazmat a little bit after Warren Isman wrote the book, we were kind of, and then 1910-120, Part Q gets done, and it has all the hazmat stuff. That was the golden ticket for the fire service, particularly even in industry, when we went to management and said, hey, listen, here it is. We have to have this kind of equipment. We need these kind of suits. We need whatever we need. And that was that. And in New Jersey specifically, they passed a law after the Union Carbide disaster over in India. They passed something in Jersey called the TCPA. You ready for this? The Toxic Catastrophe Prevention Act. Okay. But we also managed, that all the chemical companies were going, oh my God, there's going to be 10,000 things. Privately, we had the door down at the firehouse and we were dancing in a circle because in there it talked about response plans. It talked about equipment. It talked about all. So with the TCP, we went back to management and said, we're gonna need all this stuff, and that's how we got our hazmat truck and all that other things. But basically, it's not unlike, it's things that happen in kind of what I'm doing, I'm working in fire prevention again. I'm back in the Fire Prevention Bureau. When you go into certain occupancies and the guy says, give me a violation so I can get this done. Like he's trying to get the sprinkler lines painted and he can't. Would you mind writing that up? I'll get it painted after I get the violation in my hand. So it's the same thing. We can kind of use this to our advantage at certain turns.
I think from a leadership standpoint, and if we apply it to the public, just make that the filter and go through each proposal in OSHA. And if this is going to be better for the public, we have trouble arguing that we shouldn't do it. If it's staffing, if it's response times, whatever it is. But again, and people say, oh, this came down the pike. We already know we have problems. Okay. We already know there's large cities with poor staffing. Not everybody's like FDNY or Chicago or wherever else. Okay. There's a lot of medium-sized cities around this country with one person riding that ladder truck. Okay. This applies in there too. So this is not a volunteer career discussion. Admittedly, in many volunteer fire departments, if they don't have a tax base, then they need to decide what they're going to do because, I mean, you can't keep selling turkey dinners. And we're seeing a lot of it in some areas of Pennsylvania. They're now starting to establish taxing districts where for years it was fundraising, but we just can't afford to do that anymore. So,
yeah, I agree. I don't think this is one-sided or lopsided at all. Like it's not about the volunteers, it's the whole service, nationwide, it's coast to coast. And I think everybody, and even the big departments, they're going to have, like you said, if they got to buy baseball hats in New York, they need 14,000 of them. So that's a problem too. It's not just a slam dunk. With anything going that way. Tommy, you got something for us?
I just wanted to throw in a little Backstep Boys history that the gentleman who's joined us today was one of the original Backstep Boys.
That's right.
Billy, I got to thank you for giving it up and letting me slide into the spot. I'm surprised Kanterman hasn't fired me yet, but just a little bit of trivia. And once again, I feel inadequate. And I want a Billy Goldfeder mustache for Christmas.
We did. I think Billy and I did. I think we did 2 or 3 shows.
Yeah,
and that it was started up about 12 or 13 years ago, and it's around that long. And then that you were kind of in the height of your travel, doing your stuff and doing. And you said, you know what, Ronnie, I can't commit to being once a particular Monday night every month because I'm on the road and I'm working. And so I said, all right, I'll go shopping for some lesser guy. So I ended up with the lesser guy up on top.
Yeah,
for about 12 years. About 12 years.
It's great. 17 years ago, we were notified of our first grandbaby coming, and we've that's my whole focus. I mean, obviously the fire department and stuff, but I've got 6, and we're going to have 7 soon, and they and my family are all that matter. The rest of it's nice, it's fun, and it's good, and certainly enjoyed talking to you. If I can have just a last word before we wrap it up, if that's okay, and that is, it's easy to get worked up and it's easy to get pissed off at what this one wrote or what I wrote or whatever. If we take the emotion out of it and just ask that question, what's best for the public? And when we say they can't afford it, let's make sure that's true and we're just not wanting to spend the money. Do we need a 16-bay fire station that costs $30 million? Maybe we could do less and then we have more money for other things. And again, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying, look at your own family, and odds are, if you're in a smaller fire department, you live in the area you protect. 10:30 tomorrow morning, there's a fire, and your family's in that house. What are they going to get? And use that as a template to help you work your way through it. So, thank you, guys.
That's a good perspective. I agree. Tommy, do you have a role for us tonight?
Yeah, and again, kind of unusual. We were last recorded on July 12th. And, of course, it is August 11th today. This won't air until next week. But there's only been one line of duty death on the national database. And that was Ty Voth from Wichita, Kansas, who collapsed while he was working at a fire scene back on August 1st. And again, keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, what we do, Billy, at the end of every show, we read the roll between recordings, how many line of duties we had and what happened to them. And
very cool.
We kind of finish up with that. So, Billy, this was a great conversation. I hope we made a dent in some of the people's, thinking and just to get them to understand.
I got to make sure. Yeah. I'm showing my fingers crossed. It looked a little bad a minute ago. I was like, I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah, so we all really, I think we wanted to accomplish tonight, the boys and girls that are watching and ladies and gentlemen, is just to get you to think a little bit. Don't react to it. Don't take that knee jerk gut reaction. Read a little bit, dive into it, figure out creative ways, as Billy has said, and we'll get there. Well, just listen. 25, 30 years ago, we thought Brinacini and his guys lost their mind when they came up with 1500. We looked at all of that stuff in 1500 and said, "Oh, this is nuts, you guys!" And we're doing 95% of it now. I mean, we're doing most of it.
If we get to the point where we've created an awareness, where a year down the road somebody said, "Well, when did they change that stuff? I never knew anything about that." Hopefully, they know about it now, and at least try to familiarize yourselves with the process.
What we do is on normal good night, we say, slow down, use your head, stop for red, wear your seatbelt, wear your mask, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Okay, when you hug your wife and your kids, hug them tight before you say good night. So with that, We're going to say the Backstep boys are out for August. Billy Goldfeder, thank you for being here with us. We appreciate you, man, and all the stuff you do for the fire service at large. Tommy, have a lovely evening. All right, we'll see you soon.